Hey everyone, Nigel and Luke here, and welcome to Crime Zone. Vacations are supposed to be a time of relaxation, a time to leave everyday problems behind and get a taste of the good life. It's for this reason that crimes involving tourists can be especially unsettling, exposing our vulnerabilities and replacing our idyllic illusions of paradise with unthinkable nightmares. Today, we wanted to take a look at a few examples of these cases, focusing on terrifying stories of people who went on vacation and never returned. Before we get to our list, don't forget to like and subscribe to Crime Zone for more true crime content like this. It really helps us to continue building the channel. And if you've watched a bunch of our videos already, you might not even realize that you're not subscribed. While you're there, make sure to hit the notification bell to stay up to date with our latest releases. As always, we're extremely grateful to everyone who has helped support the channel. With that out of the way, here are 4 chilling unsolved cases involving people on vacation.
Christmas of 2007 was supposed to be a new start for Frank and Lita Cord. The Orange County, California couple was desperately trying to hold on to their 2 decades of marriage, which had been marred in recent years by distrust, infidelity, and addiction. The couple both believed that the completion of their new vacation home on the island of St. Martin would be a turning point. Working on the project had brought them together over the last year, and they were excited to fly friends and family out to celebrate the holidays. The home was a perfect picture of paradise for the couple, particularly for Lita, who was known for her perennial party spirit and love of gambling. In addition to the pristine ocean views and beautiful weather that the property offered, it was also a short distance from the West End Resort and, more importantly, its casino. The resort was located a 15-minute walk away, just down the hill from their new home. Despite their excitement about the island paradise, it was clear that Frank and Lita were going to have to do a lot of healing if they planned on staying together. Over the past couple of years, Lita had struggled with drug and alcohol abuse, something she used as an escape from problems in her family. She had lost 2 brothers in recent years, and her mother's health was slowly declining as she battled dementia. Lita had always enjoyed drinking, but as the turmoil in her family grew, it got to be a problem, and things only got worse when she also started abusing prescription drugs. According to friends, Frank had seemed either incapable or unwilling to comfort Lita through these struggles. In fact, he reportedly made things even worse, belittling and ridiculing her for her addiction. The emotional rift in the relationship eventually led to Lita having an affair with a younger man named Bobby, who she met in Fresno while he was renting a room from a family member. Friends said that Frank eventually found out about the affair by putting a tracking device in her purse and following her around. To address the infidelity, Lita proposed an unorthodox solution. Frank could settle the score by having an affair with one of her friends. It turned out that Frank was more than happy to oblige. Though the affair didn't last for long, it put serious strain on the relationship. Still, by all accounts, things had been better in the last year, and Frank and Lita's Christmas holiday housewarming seemed like a big success. Friends and family from the U.S. attended the extended gathering, as well as new people that the Cords had met on St. Martin. Most of those familiar with Frank and Lita's marital problems would later say that the couple seemed happy and that they were genuinely trying to turn over a new leaf. One friend even noted that Frank and Lita had confided in them over the holiday that they needed each other too much to separate. However, the happy times quickly ended when Lita went missing just a few days later. On the evening of January 11, 2008, Frank, Lita, and Frank's mother went to a dinner on the French side of the island. By this time, all of the Cords' other house guests had flown back to the United States, but Frank's mother had just flown in that day from Germany to spend some time with them. After dinner, the group had an impromptu cocktail party in a nearby parking lot with some friends, at which Lita reportedly got extremely drunk. The group decided to call it a night, and Frank, his mother, and Lita headed back to their house. Lita slept in the back seat of the car the entire way home. The last known sighting of her was by a neighbor who claimed to see her passed out in the back of the car after they arrived home. According to Frank, Lita woke up shortly after they got home and demanded the car keys to go to the casino. When Frank refused, saying that she was too drunk, she decided to walk down the hill on her own. She also refused a ride when Frank offered. Frank said that shortly after she left, he decided to drive down the road and try to convince her to come back, but he didn't see her anywhere. Assuming she had already made it to the casino safely, he went back home and waited for her to return. She never did. An investigation into Lita's disappearance began immediately, with extensive searches of the surrounding area. Interviews were conducted at the casino at the West End Resort, but no one remembered seeing Lita that night, nor could authorities find her on any of the building's surveillance footage. It seemed that she had never made it to her destination. At the same time, many people began to grow suspicious of Frank. Though friends said the story about Lita charging off to the casino while under the influence of alcohol was totally consistent with her personality, some felt that Frank's behavior after his wife's disappearance was suspicious. They said he seemed cold, detached, and unemotional. Still, Frank cooperated with the investigation and actively took part in the search for Lita. Several months later, in 2008, Frank was arrested and held in connection with Lita's disappearance, with authorities saying they had discovered new evidence in the case. However, this evidence seemingly never made its way to the public, and Frank was eventually released without facing charges. Though several of Lita's friends remain convinced that Frank killed Lita and disposed of her body, there are numerous other possibilities for what could have caused her disappearance. For starters, the stretch of road between the Cord's home and the West End Resort was rather dangerous. Aside from being full of potholes and other irregularities, it was poorly lit and covered in high brush on both sides. The road would have been nearly pitch black at the time Lita supposedly left, and it's not hard to imagine that an accident could have happened, especially considering her state of intoxication. There is also the possibility that Lita could have met with foul play at the hands of a stranger who may have spotted her on the road and either kidnapped her or convinced her to accompany them to an unknown location. The sad reality is that there are no clear answers in this case, nor does it seem like they will be coming anytime soon. The last most promising search happened all the way back in February of 2009, when friends of Lita organized a methodical canvassing effort in order to find new evidence. 2 cadaver dogs were flown over at the expense of the group, who they hoped would be able to discover Lita's remains. Unfortunately, the search came up empty-handed. The disappearance of Lita Cord remains a terrifying mystery.
On the morning of April 26, 2017, a man named Joe Milholland showed up at the vacation home of his friend, 52-year-old Francesca Mattis, in Corozal, Belize. Milholland was expecting to give Francesca a ride to the airport, as she planned to catch a flight back to Toronto later that day. However, Francesca was curiously absent. There was also no sign of her boyfriend, 36-year-old Drew Dvorsny. This was strange, since Drew's motorcycle was parked outside, but Francesca's truck was missing. Even more peculiar was the fact that their luggage still appeared to be inside. Milholland had last seen the couple just the previous night, at a local bar named Scotty's, where they had all gathered with a few other expat friends. When Francesca and Drew left the bar around 11 p.m., she had made no mention of the fact that her plans to leave the following morning had changed. The idea that Francesca would have changed her plans abruptly also made very little sense. Her planned flight back to Toronto was not just the end of another winter in Belize. It was supposed to be a more permanent departure from the country. She had recently sold her oceanfront vacation home, and upon arriving back in Canada, planned to replace it with a new piece of property in Italy, where she had been born. Concerned about the bizarre situation that morning, Milholland contacted Francesca's brother in Canada, who called WestJet to see if she had checked in for her flight to Toronto. The airline confirmed that she had indeed checked in, and for a time, everything seemed okay. That is, until the plane landed and Francesca was discovered not to be on board. At first, Francesca's brother suspected that something might have happened between his sister and Drew. As he began to entertain dark possibilities, he wondered if Drew might have kidnapped Francesca, or even done something worse. But when he spoke to Drew's brother, he was told that there was no way that the former Marine was capable of it. He just wasn't the type. After that, a massive search effort was launched by local police, aided by friends of Drew and Francesca, as well as other expats in the community. On the 5th day of the search, the first break in the case was made, when a hunter discovered Francesca's white 1998 Isuzu Rodeo in the middle of a sugarcane field. It had been heavily stripped for parts. The only thing that seemed to have been left behind was a roll of duct tape that Francesca used to keep her headlight attached. A day later, the search came to an end, when the bodies of Drew and Francesca were found in the middle of a different sugarcane field, roughly 6 kilometers away from where the truck had been discovered. Their hands had been bound with duct tape, and they had been strangled to death. They were both dressed in the same clothes that they had been wearing when they had left the bar on the night of their disappearances. The sole suspect in the case was a 54-year-old man named John Deshays from Barrie, Ontario. Deshays was renting the ground floor apartment in Francesca's oceanfront property at the time of her disappearance and was arrested almost immediately after her body was discovered. After 10 days, however, Deshays was released from police custody after being cleared of any involvement. The two were apparently good friends, and Francesca's brother would later say that there was no way that Deshays was involved in his sister's murder. After that, local authorities almost immediately hit a wall investigating the case. With few resources and one of the highest murder rates in the world, it's common for violent crimes in Belize to go unsolved. According to Francesca and Drew's friends and family, it became clear that the local police were going to be able to do very little to generate or investigate future leads. They were told that phone records could not be analyzed due to lack of resources, and that police did not have the money to make long-distance calls. The bodies also had to be cremated almost immediately after they were discovered, as family members were advised they would not be accepted at the morgue if they reached too severe a state of decomposition. The Canadian and US governments were likewise unable to be of much use in the investigation. Without any jurisdiction, there was not much they could do to intervene. With little hope of a proper investigation, friends and family of Francesca and Drew were left mostly to speculate about what might have happened to them. Given the amount of crime in Belize that is related to the drug trade, many theorized that perhaps the couple witnessed something that they were not supposed to. Still others theorized that the homicides could have been linked to Francesca's real estate business. There were rumors that a mysterious American real estate investor had wanted the oceanside property that Francesca had recently sold, and that there were other dangers related to property investment in the area. There were also reports that Francesca had been threatened in the days leading up to her murder, but the subject of these threats, as well as the identity of who made them, remains unknown. Though the motive for the crime remains mysterious, it seems, at the very least, there were likely two or more perpetrators. The state that Francesca's vehicle was found in, as well as the fact that Drew had extensive combat experience as a Marine, suggests that it would have likely taken more than one person to kill the couple and dispose of their bodies. Almost 4 years later, the families of Drew and Francesca are still searching for answers, but say that they are skeptical that they will ever see justice. The best thing we can hope for right now is that someone comes forward with answers, shedding some much-needed light on this mysterious cold case.
It seems like many people are familiar with the story of Natalie Holloway, the 18-year-old who disappeared from a high school graduation trip in Aruba in 2005. However, there is another case that took place in the country just a few years later, the details of which are similarly chilling. In July of 2011, 35-year-old Robin Gardner of Bethesda, Maryland, told her boyfriend that she was going on vacation to Orlando with her parents. She had recently lost her job as a patient coordinator in a dental office, and she wanted to go on the trip to clear her head. In actuality, though, Robin had accepted an offer to go on a lavish trip to Aruba with a 50-year-old businessman named Gary Giordano. Robin had met Gary online the previous year and had been communicating with him occasionally ever since. This was not the first time he had asked her to travel with him, but it was the first time she had accepted. At that moment, she was looking for an escape. Robin and Gary arrived in Aruba on July 31st, checking into the Renaissance Aruba Resort and Casino in Oranjestad. Shortly after she arrived, Robin received a call from her boyfriend, Richard Forrester. According to Richard, Robin said she couldn't talk. She sent a follow-up email the next morning explaining that she was in Aruba, but that it was because plans had changed last minute and the family had decided to change their destination. Though this seemed bizarre, Richard accepted it. However, he became far more concerned when Robin posted on his Facebook wall early the following morning, saying only, "This sucks." The last message Richard received from Robin was at approximately 3 p.m. on August 2nd. It read, "Don't worry, I care about you, I love you, we'll talk and sort things out when I get back." Just 3 hours later, Robin was reported missing. Authorities were alerted to Robin's disappearance by Gary, who claimed that she had gone missing while they were snorkeling that afternoon. He said that while they were out in the ocean, the currents began to get stronger, and they had decided to head back to shore. He told police that he had lost sight of Robin while they swam back, and that he believed she had been swept off by the strong currents. Though authorities immediately conducted a search of the area, they were unsuccessful in locating Robin. However, because of his bizarre behavior and the inconsistencies in his story, attention soon turned to Gary. For starters, Robin had last been seen just 2 hours before she was reported missing at a local restaurant. Witnesses recalled her looking intoxicated and barely touching her food. In their words, she also looked pretty put together, as if she had spent considerable time on her makeup and outfit. None of these facts seemed to be consistent with someone who was about to go snorkeling. Family and friends would later say that the idea that Robin would have gone snorkeling at all seemed strange. She was known to dislike getting her hair wet and would never wade more than waist deep into the water. At the time Gary reported Robin missing, some also reported seeing him sweating profusely with what appeared to be a fresh scratch mark on his neck. Further leads in the case proved to be equally chilling. It turned out that Gary had a long history of abusing women, and there were some witnesses who said they had seen him grab Robin by the neck and force her into an elevator during the trip. Authorities in Aruba also released the fact that they had found graphic nude photos on Gary's digital camera, though provided no additional details about what the photos contained or where they were taken. Additionally, investigators said they were looking into a $1.5 million accidental death insurance policy that Gary took out on Robin before the trip. Suspicions were raised even further when Gary was arrested at the airport on August 5th after he attempted to change his flight to an earlier departure despite agreeing to stay and help authorities with their investigation. However, Gary was eventually released in November after a judge declared there was insufficient evidence to hold him. Despite ample circumstantial evidence, there was no conclusive proof of any wrongdoing, and Gary subsequently returned to his home in Maryland. In the years since, there have been few concrete updates in Robin's disappearance, though authorities, as well as her family, believe that she is likely dead. The last major development in the case came in 2017 when a team looking into the disappearance of Natalie Holloway uncovered a bone fragment during their investigation. The fragment was determined not to be a match to Holloway, but there were hopes that it might be a match to Robin Gardner. At the time, it was reported that Robin's sister was trying to have the fragment submitted for further DNA testing. Unfortunately, the lead appears to have been a dead end, as we could find no information or follow-up to the report. It stands to reason that if a bone was a match, the details would have been released to the public by now. Sadly, it appears that the search for Robin Gardner is not yet over.
Before the spring of 2009, 17-year-old Brittany Drexel was living what was by all accounts a normal life. She was outgoing and athletic, a star soccer player on her high school team in Chi-Lai, New York, who was known for moving at lightning speed down the field despite her small stature. After finishing school, she had dreams of becoming a nurse or a cosmetologist. Brittany also had familiar problems. She had struggled with depression throughout her life and had been hit particularly hard by the separation of her mother and stepfather the previous year. But sadly, the entire story of Brittany's life, the good and the bad, was about to change, following a single fateful decision. In April of 2009, Brittany asked her mother Dawn if she could go to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, over spring break with some friends. Dawn told her that she could not. She did not know the other teenagers that planned to go on the vacation, and she knew that the entire thing would be unsupervised. Besides, she just had a bad feeling that something terrible would happen. The next few days were consumed by heated arguments between Brittany and Dawn about the trip, until finally on April 22nd, Brittany asked if she could go to a friend's house for a couple of days to calm down. Dawn agreed to this and allowed Brittany to leave, having no idea that she planned to go to South Carolina with or without her mother's permission. Brittany left for Myrtle Beach that night, arriving the following day and checking into the Bar Harbor Hotel. On April 25th, Brittany called Dawn and told her she was at the beach. Though it is unclear whether she was attempting to come clean about her whereabouts, Dawn assumed that Brittany was referring to Charlotte Beach, a local spot in Rochester on the shoreline of Lake Ontario. It was unseasonably warm at the time, so Dawn thought nothing of it, especially when Brittany said that she would see her tomorrow. That all changed when Brittany's boyfriend, John Greco, contacted her later that night and said that he could not get a hold of Brittany. He had not accompanied her on the trip, but had been texting with her constantly. That was until the text abruptly stopped around 9:15 p.m. No one else seemed to know where she was. When Dawn's own repeated calls to Brittany's phone went unanswered, she contacted the police. The next morning, an investigation was launched by Myrtle Beach police. They learned that Brittany had left her friends on the beach the previous evening and had headed to another hotel, the Blue Water Resort. There, she had met with a friend named Peter Brozowitz, a 20-year-old club promoter who she knew from Rochester. Brozowitz was also vacationing in Myrtle Beach at the time, and the two had gone to a nightclub called Club Kryptonite together the night before Brittany's disappearance. When Brittany arrived at the Blue Water on the night of April 25th, she spent some time in the room where Brozowitz was staying with 4 other men, before leaving again around 8:45. This was confirmed by security camera footage obtained from the Blue Water, which showed both her arrival and departure from the hotel. In the last text she sent to her boyfriend, Brittany said that she was making the 1.5-mile journey back to the Bar Harbor Hotel. She had not been seen since. A search of Brittany's hotel room revealed that most of her belongings were still there. The only things missing seemed to be the clothes that she was last seen wearing, as well as her purse and cell phone. Using the phone's network pings, investigators were able to track its location, leading them on a path roughly 60 miles south of Myrtle Beach, to an area along US Route 17 near the Georgetown-Charleston County line. The pings from the cell phone stopped abruptly on the morning of April 26th. Realizing that the evidence strongly suggested foul play, police conducted an extensive search of the surrounding area for almost 2 weeks, combing through the many places where it was thought a body could have been dumped. However, no trace of Brittany was ever found, and the information police uncovered failed to lead them to any definitive suspects in her disappearance. It would take more than 7 years for any significant progress to be made in the case. In June of 2016, the FBI announced that they had reason to believe that Brittany Drexel had been murdered shortly after her disappearance. They theorized that she had been kidnapped from Myrtle Beach and that she had been killed close to where they had traced the data from her cell phone. As subsequent information was released in the following months, it was reported that the FBI had based their findings on allegations made by a South Carolina inmate named Taquan Brown. Brown claimed that shortly after Brittany had disappeared, he had gone to visit a stash house for weapons and drugs in McClellanville to give money to the father of a man named Timothy Deshaun Taylor. Upon entering the house, he said he witnessed Brittany being sexually abused by Taylor and several others. At one point, Brittany had supposedly run from the house in an attempt to escape, but had been pistol whipped and taken back inside, after which Brown claimed he heard 2 gunshots. He then said that he witnessed her body being wrapped up and removed from the house, after which it was dumped in one of the many alligator ponds in the area. According to investigators, Brown's version of events was partially corroborated by a second unnamed informant, who said that Taylor had kidnapped Brittany for the purposes of human trafficking, but had decided to kill her after the case drew too much media attention. At the time of the allegations against Taylor, he was currently incarcerated due to a parole violation. He had been previously convicted for his involvement in a 2011 robbery of a McDonald's, for which he had received 18 months of probation. Although he had served his sentence, the government decided to pursue federal charges for the same crime, using a controversial exception to the double jeopardy rule known as the separate sovereigns doctrine. Under this legal principle, the federal and state government are both granted the ability to separately prosecute the same crime, owing to the fact that they are considered separate entities. Though prosecutors initially claimed that they were simply dissatisfied with Taylor's sentence in the 2011 robbery case, court transcripts would later prove that they pursued the charges at least in part because they considered Taylor a suspect in the disappearance of Brittany Drexel. Taylor vehemently denied involvement in Brittany's disappearance, and ultimately his case ended in another sentence of probation and time served in December of 2019. As for the allegations made by Brown, it seemed that several details of his story shifted over time. In an interview in February of 2019, he told reporters that he had actually seen Brittany on 4 separate occasions after her disappearance. He recounted seeing the teenager twice at the stash house that he had previously mentioned, but said that her murder had occurred elsewhere. According to Brown, Taylor was still involved in Brittany's kidnapping and sexual assault, but she hadn't been killed until roughly a month later, at a property belonging to his cousin 80 miles south of McClellanville. Brown claimed that the killer was a man he knew only as Nate. Unfortunately, few details of Brown's story could ever be successfully corroborated. The man who accompanied Brown that day could never be tracked down, and his cousin had since died of a heart attack. A third supposed witness had been murdered in 2016. With no concrete evidence in the case, no charges were ever brought against Timothy Deshawn Taylor, nor anyone else. While Brittany's family is still desperately seeking answers, it seems that without any new information, her mysterious disappearance is doomed to remain a tragic mystery. That brings us to the end of our list. Do you know of any other cases like this that you'd like to see featured in a future video? Tell us about them in the comments section below. As always, if you enjoyed our video, don't forget to like and subscribe to Crime Zone for more true crime content like this, making sure to hit the notification bell to stay up to date with our latest releases. Thank you for watching.